Chapter 2, Like Plague Under the Seal by Pastor Dean Odell. The Vril Society in Operation Paperclip. So Saul died for his transgression, which he committed against the Lord, even against the word of the Lord, which he kept not. And also for asking counsel of one that had a familiar spirit, a medium or a channeler, to inquire of it, and inquired not of the Lord. Therefore he slew him, and turned the kingdom unto David, the son of Jesse. 1 Chronicles 10:13-14. But evil men and seducers shall wax worse and worse, deceiving and being deceived. 2 Timothy 3:13. We must be alert to the danger that public policy could itself become the captive of a scientific, technological elite. President Eisenhower, farewell speech given on January 17th, 1961. When President Eisenhower was pressed by Aber York, the first director of ARPA, which later became DARPA, to clarify what or who he meant in the warning he issued in his farewell speech, without hesitation, Eisenhower answered, Werner von Braun, NASA, and Edward Teller, father of the hydrogen bomb, it doesn't take long when doing research on the satanic plot to deceive mankind about the true nature of God's creation, to uncover the individuals and occult societies that have pushed demonic ideas such as aliens, distant galaxies, and space travel into the mainstream. When exploring this topic, it is important to realize that the demon-inspired philosophies and secret societies that spawned the wicked Nazi Party in Germany and also ultimately forged the deeply held beliefs of its Nazi SS officers and scientists like Werner von Braun, who were part of early rocket development. And for those who may not know, the Nazi SS was a German military branch that was brutal, evil, and fiercely loyal to Hitler and the Nazi ideals. Occult groups like the Thule Society, Knights Templar, Freemasons, Vril Society, and the SS Black Sun have all worked together to further Satan's agenda. Although some over the years have tried to discredit information regarding the occult roots of the Nazis, Himmler, the leader of the SS and one of the main architects of the Holocaust, had the occult symbol of the Black Sun placed in the floor of his Worlsburg Castle. Directly under the Black Sun was a swastika on the ceiling of the room below that was used for occult ceremonies and rituals. The Vril Society was formed in 1917 by two women who were mediums and four men. This group met at the Sophenhaar Cafe in Vienna to discuss topics such as the coming new age, secret revelations, the spear of destiny, and the magical violet black stone. They spoke of making contact with the ancient Germanic Babylonian deities like Ishtar, Astarte, and Osiris, and of communicating with distant worlds in outer space. The originating members of the Vril Society included the occult Karl Hofsauer, Baron Rudolf von Seberdorf, World War I ace pilot Lothar Weiss, and prelate Gernot of the secret society Temple Massioni, the inheritors of the Knights Templar, and Maria Orsi, a medium. Let's not forget, the Freemasons also have been connected with a mysterious order called the Knights Templar. These knights were Roman Catholic monks who took up arms in 1118 AD in order to protect Christian pilgrims traveling from Jaffa, a port city in Israel, to Jerusalem. According to legend, the Knights Templar discovered the greatest treasure in human or history buried in the ruins of King Solomon's temple. The knights became rich, so rich in fact that they were the targets of envy and suspicion. In 1307, King Philip IV of France had all of the Knights Templar arrested so that he could take possession of their great wealth. What happened to the knights after their imprisonment remains a mystery. But some say that they went into hiding and continued their work in secret, only to re-emerge in Europe during the 1700s as the modern Freemasons. So, this makes it clear that one of the founders of the Vril Society was a high-level Freemason. The term Vril and many of the occult conceptions of the group came from an 1871 novel, The Coming Race by Edward Bulwer Lytton. It is reported that Bulwer Lytton was a member of the occult society, secret society of the Rosicrucians. The book describes a race of men physically far in advance of our own. They have acquired powers over themselves and over things that made them almost godlike. For the moment, they are in hiding. They are said to live in caves in the center of the earth. Soon they will emerge to reign over us. While researching their classic book, Warning of the Magicians, author Jacques Bergier and Louis Pauwels were given the above account by one of the world's greatest rocket experts, Dr. Lily Ley, who fled Germany in 1933. Dr. Ley said that the Vril Society, which formed shortly after the Nazis came to power, believed they had secret knowledge that would enable them to change their race and become equal of men hidden in the bowels of the earth. Methods of concentration, a whole system of eternal gymnastics, which they were and would be transformed. In Litton's The Coming Race, the subterranean people used the Vril force to operate and govern the world. A few children armed with Vril power rods are said capable of exterminating a race of over 22 million threatening barbarians. Served by robots and able to fly on Vril wings, the vegetarian Vril are, by their own reckoning, racially and culturally superior to everyone else on Earth, above or below the ground. At one point, the narrator concludes from linguistic evidence that the Vril are descended from the same ancestors as the great Aryan family, from which in varied streams has flowed the dominant civilization of the world. The Vril force, or Vril energy, was said to be derived from the black sun, a big ball of prima materia, which supposedly exists in the center of the earth, giving light to the Vril and putting out radiation in the form of Vril. The Vril Society believed that Aryans were the actual biological ancestors of the black sun. This force was known to the ancients under their many names, and it has been called Chi, Ojas, Vril, Astral Light, Odic Forces, or Orgon. In a discussion of the 28th degree of the ancient and accepted Scottish rite of Freemasonry, called Knight of the Sun or Prince Adept, Albert Pike said, "There is in nature one most potent force, by means whereof a single man who could possess himself of it and should know how to direct it, could revolutionize and change the face of the world. This is the force that the Nazis and their inner occult circle were so desperately trying to unleash upon the world, for which the Vril Society had apparently groomed Hitler, a manifestation of the great work promulgated by the adepts of secret societies throughout the ages." In December 1919, members of the Full Society, the Vril Society, and other occultists rented a small lodge near Berks Garden. Maria Orsic, an other medium who is only known as Sigrun, joined them. Maria claimed to have received telepathic medium transmissions, what New Agers today would call channeling, in a language unknown to her, containing technical information for building a flying machine that could reach distant galaxies or space travel. Vril documents mentioned that these telepathic messages originated in Alvarin, a solar system 68 light years away in the constellation Taurus. By 1943, Orsic claimed that the subsequent message from the aliens in Alvarin revealed that there were two habitable planets orbiting that star, and that the ancient Sumerians were linked to the aliens there. As crazy as Marie Orsic's tale sounds, just before sitting down to write this chapter, I read a Yahoo News Business Insider article, "Earth-like planets in our home galaxy. New research reveals." The article states, "Our galaxy could be littered with warm, watery planets like Earth." That's the conclusion of researchers at Penn State University, who used data from NASA's Kepler telescope to estimate the number of Earth-like planets in the Milky Way. The result, published in the Astronomical Journal this week, suggests that the Earth-like planet orbits one in every 4 sun-like stars. Totaled up, that means there could be up to 10 billion Earth-like worlds in our home galaxy. The estimate is an important step in the search for alien life, since any potential life on other planets would most likely be found on an Earth-like world warm enough to hold liquid water. How did they come to this amazing conclusion that there could be 10 billion Earth-like planets with possible alien life in our home galaxy? Would you believe that they made this incredible claim based on seeing tiny dips in a star's brightness through a telescope? The article continued. The researchers estimate it is based on data from NASA's Kepler Space Telescope, launched in 2009. The telescope used what's known as the transit method to find worlds outside our solar system. It watched over 530,000 stars for tiny dips in a star's brightness that could be caused by a planet passing in front of it. Transits, in other words, there could be 10 billion warm, cozy like Earth planets in a home galaxy, new research reveals. Yes, a star twinkled, and NASA's experts and their space fairy tale worshipping trainee students deduce that the dip in brightness is an Earth-like planet with the potential for alien life. Then, NASA artists jumped into creative mode to provide beautiful space art of what they imagine the new planets look like. It is the same load of baloney that Maria Orsic channeled in 1919, but now people embrace it because the secret societies call it science. As a matter of fact, Dr. Stephen Greer of the Serious Disclosure Project does the exact same thing when he takes people out of the desert and uses occult Buddhist meditation techniques to channel the contact of UFOs. Members of the Vril Society are said to have included Adolf Hitler, Alfred Rosenberg, Heinrich Himmler, Hermann Göring, and Hitler's personal physician, Dr. Theodor Morell. These were original members of the full society that supposedly joined Vril in 1919. The NSDAP, the National Socialized Deutsche Arbeiterpartei, was created by Thule in 1920. Dr. Kron, who helped to create the Nazi flag, was also a Thulist. And it was this atmosphere of occult philosophies in science fiction about space travel and aliens that the young Werner von Braun grew up and in later becoming a decorated Nazi SS officer who used slave labor, torture, and death to build his V-2 rockets for Hitler. Von Braun eventually became the head of the United States rocket program and the head of NASA and so-called Apollo missions. Some try to blow off any talk about the Vril Society and the Nazi occultism by saying it's just a conspiracy theory or a bunch of nuts that believed a stupid novel. However, leading Luciferian theophysicists like Helena Blavatsky, William Scott Elliott, and Rudolf Steiner accepted The Coming Race as a book based on occult truth. And I assure you that Miss Blavatsky, who was the founder of Lucifer magazine, Lucifer Publishing Company, and the author of The Secret Doctrine, in which she declares Lucifer, the serpent, to be God and the Holy Spirit, was duped by something that was just a novel. Furthermore, the plot and the occult beliefs in the coming race can clearly be seen in the twisted philosophies of Hitler and his Nazi officers, from the superiority of the Aryan race to the mass extermination of the undesirable barbarians. It is alleged that the Vril Society established contact with the Vril chiefs or the Vril themselves and secretly began working with certain German Nazis scientists in the late 20s. It is no coincidence that in 1936, Hitler became and started sending teams into caves and mines all over the world searching for the Vril. As usual, Hollywood mixed fact and fiction when they included this scene in the plot of Raiders of the Lost Ark. In 1937 and 1938, the Nazis finally explored extensively and then all of a sudden stopped searching and built secret bases there. It has been said that Antarctica is where they made contact with the unknown Superman, who lived in the fabled Rainbow City, and it is extensively researched and documented that the Nazis did have and may still have secret bases in Antarctica, where the contact with the aliens is ongoing. This would definitely explain all of the quick, covert visits to Antarctica by world leaders in the last few years. This contact with aliens would also help shine light on these strange statements made by two well-known Nazi scientists. Werner von Braun said this in 1959, "We find ourselves faced by powers which are far stronger than Hitler assumed, and whose base is at present unknown to us. More, I cannot say at present we are now engaged in entering closer contact with those powers, and within 6 or 9 months' time, it may be possible to speak with more precision on this matter. Dr. Hermann Oberth, who pioneered rocket design for the German Reich during the World War II and later advanced rocket technology for the American manned space launches, cryptically stated, "We cannot take the credit for our record advancement in certain scientific fields alone. We have been helped." We asked by whom, he replied, "And the people of other worlds." It is interesting to note that Werner von Braun participated in a U.S. government expedition to Antarctica in 1967. Allegedly, it was to search for meteorites, but I believe it was to make contact with those powers that he alluded to in 1959. And just to be clear again, I do not believe in ETs or aliens from other planets or galaxies far, far away. I believe Satan and his fallen angels and their half-breed offspring called the Nephilim or Raphaim are deceiving people into believing that they are aliens. They have loyal human accomplices that know exactly what they are, but they lie and deceive right along with Satan and his evil entities. It is a plan that Satan has been unfolding for many, many years, and although he has been announcing it through his people using various avenues, most still do not see it. In the 1998 X-Files Flight the Future movie, Agent Scully is stung by a bee that infects her with an alien virus. Scully collapses and her partner, Agent Mulder, calls an ambulance. After loading Agent Scully into the ambulance, the driver shoots Mulder. Not severely injured, Mulder is able to slip out of the hospital to find Scully. He meets a man that gives her location and the vaccine. Mulder finds Scully in a large underground facility in Antarctica where humans are being kept in strange enclosures. They make it to the surface and escape just as a massive alien spaceship breaks through from beneath the ice and flies away into the sky. Validating Mulder's lifelong search for alien. Was Fight for the Future just a movie, or is it the Illuminati, Luciferian pre-programming for their coming grand finale of deception? I know what I believe. Now, let's talk about Operation Paperclip. After World War II ended in 1945, victorious Russian and American intelligence teams began a treasure hunt throughout occupied Germany for military and scientific booty. They were looking for things like new rocket and aircraft designs, medicines, and electronics, but they were also hunting down the most precious spoils of all. The scientists whose work had nearly won the war for Germany. The engineers, intelligence officers of the Nazi war machine. The U.S. military rounded up Nazi scientists and brought them to America. It had originally intended merely to debrief them and send them back to Germany. But when it realized the extent of the scientific knowledge and expertise, the War Department decided it would be a waste to send the scientists home. Following the discovery of flying discs, Foo Fighters, particle laser beams, weaponry in German military bases, the War Department decided that NASA and the CIA must control this technology and NASA engineers that had worked on this technology. There was only one problem. It was illegal. U.S. law explicitly prohibited Nazi officials from immigrating to America, and as many as 3/4 of the scientists in question had been and committed Nazis. Take, for example, Nazi Arthur Rudolph during the war. Rudolph was operations director of the Amidst factory at the Dorauhausen concentration camp where 20,000 workers died from beatings, hanging, and starvation. Rudolph had been a member of the Nazi Party since 1931. A 1945 military file on him said simply 100% Nazi, dangerous type, security threat, suggest internment. But the JIOA's final dossier on him said that there was nothing in his records indicating that he was a war criminal or an ad art Nazi or otherwise objectionable. Rudolph became a U.S. citizen and later designed the Saturn V rocket used in the Apollo moon landings. In 1984, when his war record was finally investigated, he fled to West Germany. And guess who worked right beside Arthur Rudolph at the slave labor death metalwork factory building Hitler's V-2 rockets and indiscriminately killed civilian men, women, and children? none other than the golden boy of NASA, Disney star of space propaganda, and head of the American Space Apollo programs, Baron Werner von Braun. The 1963 book, The Secret of Huntsville, The True Career of Rocket Baron Werner von Braun, by popular author and lawyer Julius Madar, depicted von Braun as a passionate and enthusiastic Nazi. On the dust jacket of the book, there was a drawing of von Braun wearing a black SS Stromflower uniform. Around von Braun's neck was the Knight's Cross. The Knight's Cross of the Iron Cross was given to recognize extreme battlefield bravery or successful leadership and was one of Nazi Germany's most prestigious and famous awards. The Western equivalent might be the U.S. Medal of Honor. Annie Jacobson, Princeton alum, and the author of the New York best-selling book Area 51, wrote the definitive expose on Operation Paperclip and the Nazi scientists that formed our space program. Her research included exclusive interviews with dozens of Paperclip family members, colleagues, interrogates, and access to German archival documents, including previously unseen papers made available by direct descendants of the Third Reich's ranking members. Files obtaining through the Freedom of Information Act, dossiers discovered in government archives, and at Harvard University. Her book, Operation Paperclip, The Secret Intelligence Program That Brought Nazi Scientists to America, follows more than a dozen Nazi scientists through their post-war lives. She reveals just how dark government can get in the name of national security. In the chaos following World War II, the U.S. government faced many difficult decisions, including what to do with the Third Reich scientific minds. These were the brains behind the Nazis' once indomitable war machine. So began Operation Paperclip, a decades-long covert project to bring Hitler scientists around 1600 and their families to the United States. Many of these men were accused of war crimes and others stood trial at Nuremberg. One was convicted of mass murder and slavery. They were also directly responsible for major advances in rocketry, medical treatment, and the U.S. space program. Annie Jacobson also documents that Werner von Braun was in charge of the Mittelwerk V2 factory in Nordhausen. The underground factory at Nordhausen had been in operation since late August 1943. After a Royal Air Force attack on the Pimmernon facility up north faced arraignments production to move elsewhere. The day after that attack, Heinrich Himmler, Rufhauer's SS, paid a visit to Hitler and proposed they move rocket production underground. Hitler agreed, and the SS was put in charge of supplying slaves and overseeing facilities construction. The individual in charge of expanding Nordhausen from a mine to a tunnel complex was Brigadier General Hans Kammler, a civil engineer and architect who earlier in his career built the gas chambers at Auschwitz. The first group of 107 laborers arrived Mittelwerk in late August 1943. It became from Buchenwald concentration camp, located 50 miles to the southeast. The wrought iron signs over the Buttonwald gate read regime.The sign. Everyone gets what he deserves. Digging tunnels was hard labor, but the SS feared prisoners might revolt if they had mining tools, so the men dug with their bare hands. Notable among the staff and the important to Operation Paperclip was the man in charge of the production, a high school graduate named Arthur Rudolph. Rudolph's specialty was a rocket engine assembly. He had worked under von Braun in his capacity since 1934. Rudolph was a Nazi ideologue. He joined the party before there was any national pressure to do so. In 1931, what he lacked in academic pedigree, he made up for as a slave driver. As the Mittelwerk operations director, Rudolph worked with the SS construction and staff to underground factory. Then he oversaw production on the assembly line for V Weapons scientific director Werner von Braun. The prisoners worked 12-hour shift, 7 days a week, putting together V Weapons. By the end of the first 2 months, there were 8,000 men living and working in this cramped underground space. There was no fresh air in the tunnels, no ventilation system, no water, and very little light. Blasting went on day and night, and the dust after every blast was so thick that it was impossible to see 5 steps ahead. read one report, laborers slept inside the tunnels on the wood bunk beds, and there was no washing facilities and no sanitation. The trains were barrels cut in half. The workers suffered and died from starvation, dysentery, pleurisy, pneumonia, tuberculosis, and phlemalgia from beatings. The men were walking skeletons, skin stretched over their bones. Some perished from ammonia, burns to the lungs. Others died by being crushed from the weight of the rocket parts they were forced to carry. They died, and they were replaceable. Humans and machine parts went into the tunnels, rockets and corpses came out. Workers who were slow in on the production lines were beaten to death. Insubordinates were derogated or hanged. After the war crimes investigators determined that approximately half of the 60,000 men eventually brought to Nordhaus were worked to death. The truth about the Nordhausen V2 facility should not be surprising to anyone familiar with World War II history. The Nazi SS officers and soldiers were known for this kind of evil and brutality. However, many people don't know or ignore the crucial fact that Nazi SS officer Werner von Braun was in charge of that underground torture chamber. He should have swung from the gallows at Nuremberg for his crimes, but he escaped justice. Years later, Werner von Braun downplayed his Nazi past, and a famous biography conveniently left it all out. The U.S. government also helped it all get quiet. The U.S. military also was active in transforming German Nazi into honest German scientists. The Joint Intelligence Operation Agenda, JIOA, had actually started collecting German scientists in May of 1945, even though President Truman didn't formally order to do so as an Operation Paperclip until August of that year. Furthermore, when the president finally did give his order to create Operation Paperclip, it was with the understanding that any German who was even a member of the Nazi Party or an active supporter of Nazi militarism was to be excluded from the project. This would have made most of the German rocket scientists, including Werner von Braun and others involved in both rocketry as well as nuclear research, ineligible to bring to the U.S. under the terms of the president's directive. To circumvent the president's intent as well as the requirements of the Allied Potsdam Yalta Agreement, the JIOA created false employment and political biographies for the scientists, even going as far as to expunge their names from the Nazi Party membership list. With fake documents and newly cleaned records, the former Nazi scientists were granted security clearances to work in the programs that eventually became NASA. Consider the strangeness around the Nuremberg tribunal that tried Nazi war crimes. Obvious war criminals like Göring, Field Marshal Waldheim, and a slew of others are swinging from the gallows, or in Göring's case, cheating the hangman by swallowing cyanide. Other Nazi bigwigs like Grand Admiral Karl Donitz, mastermind of Germany's devastating U-boat campaign against Allied shipping, or Minister of the Armaments Albert Speer, and Finance Minister Reichsbank President Horace Greeley-Shout were imprisoned. Missing from the docket of the accused, of course, were the rocket scientists headed by Dr. Werner von Braun and General Walter Dorenberger, already headed to America to take charge of America's ballistic missile and space programs, along with a host of scientists and engineers and technicians under the then super-secret Project Paperclip. They, like their nuclear physicists and physicist counterparts in Germany, had seemingly suffered from a similar Bumbler's malady. For once having produced the first successful V1 and V2 prototypes comparatively early in the war, they suffered a similar lack of inspiration and ingenuity, so that the legend goes, managed to produce only paper rockets and theoretical study projects after that. Perhaps most significantly, by joint agreement of the Allied and Soviet prosecutors at Nuremberg, missing from evidence in the tribunal was the vast amount of documentary evidence implicating the Nazi regime in occult beliefs, systems, and practices. Why did they hide the vast amount of documentary evidence implicating the Nazi regime and their occult satanic belief system and practices? They hid those satanic and secret society roots of the Nazi scientists because those inconvenient truths would not have gone over well with the far more conservative Christian America of the late 1940s and 1950s. But the more sinister reason for hiding the occult beliefs was the satanic Luciferian cabal in America and Russia had plans not only for weapons development, but complex hoax. This scheme of theirs would turn many away from the trusting the biblical account of creation and ultimately keep them from finding Jesus Christ as the one true God, creator, and personal savior from sin and eternal judgment. This is what the spiritual war has been about since Lucifer rebelled against God and Adam and Eve were created.